You're listening to From the Chair, and I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. Join us each episode as we talk to athletic directors from across America. We're going to talk about topics like leadership, career development, issues of the day, and I can promise you we're going to have some fun along the way too. So sit back, listen in, and let's dive in. Let's go. All right, welcome in. Today's guest is the Director of Athletics at Central Michigan University, Amy Folan. Amy, thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me, Mike. It's great to see you as always.
As always, long time friendship in the industry. You know, I told you off the air, I want to talk about what I think is a very interesting career and resume in that I bet if you laid the 130 or whatever number of FBS resumes on the table, there would be very few that would have the entry that yours presents because of, you know, I'm going to specifically highlight just for a moment your time at Texas, which was almost 20 years. And you have this rich, vibrant, deep history on the internal side of the business, primarily from a compliance perspective initially. And then you pivoted during your time at Texas and took on some significant external responsibilities, including the fundraising and development part of the business. And I want to take a few minutes on this, Amy, so we can start this as a high level. How has that prepared you? It's got to be unique, right? I don't know. Are you aware of other ADs? I mean, look, there's a mixture of demographics and experiences across the board, but the long relationship or the long time you spend in each of those endeavors, are you aware of anybody else that has that kind of experience?
No, I would say in some sense, no, and some yes. I think about 20 years ago, I'm getting old. When you got into the business, late 90s, I think a lot of women and even people of color were getting opportunities in academics and compliance. So we just were not getting a lot of opportunities in fundraising and some of the revenue areas. So if you were on that path, then you look at a lot of the people that are in those categories, they were my peers 20 years ago, and they were in academics and compliance. A lot of people that are in the chair now. But I think to elevate and to get in the chair, then we had to find ways to get exposure to the revenue external and just breadth. I think it can happen the other way, but I knew that I had an opportunity, loved the student athlete experience. It was, transformational for me, and I love being a part of trying to make that better. And so compliance was an avenue that presented a way for me to be around, honestly, all the aspects of the athletic department, but as a young female, football, men's basketball, women's basketball, some of the power sports, sit in the room with the AD, see what the AD was thinking, just listen, learn. And I saw compliance as a way to kind of give me broad-based exposure and then use that opportunity to try to fix things nationally, knowing I did aspire one day to be in the chair. And then when I got the opportunity, I kept telling my mentors, hey, what do I need to do? I want to be an AD. And they'd say, well, eventually you need to get over into this external side and you need to be around some of the power sports, and compliance gave me that. And I think those people eventually helped me transition and get into some aspects that I needed that I would not have gotten if I just stayed on the compliance path.
Yeah, and when you become an athletic director, you become a generalist at the end of the day, right? And we all come with our skill sets we bring to the job. There are a lot of folks that listen to this particular podcast that are at different stages in their career in college athletics. We certainly have listeners that are outside of college athletics, but it's heavily skewed towards those that are in the industry. So if you could sit at the top of the mountain, between your career on the internal side of the house and the external of the house, and look each direction and speak truth to the other side about your learnings, I would be curious as to what you would tell those who have today their history, their day-to-day is on the external side of the business, that you would say that you would tell them from your having now been on both sides of the coin. And then let's flip it and say what would you tell those who work on the internal side of the business from your experience, deep experience in those two spaces?
Yeah, I think one of the things it does, gives you confidence because you've been in the details on both levels and coming up and seeing both sides. So then when you have to look at the whole picture and you're the person in the chair, you kind of understand and have a grasp on both sides. So you don't feel like there's a big gap that you see. You kind of like, okay, I'm familiar with that. And you can appreciate, I think, your staff more in their efforts because you know what it's like from that perspective. I also would say that I remember being at the Sport Management Institute. I think I was on the executive committee, and we did this exercise with professor, and it said, okay, in your industry, do you have to be, stern? Do you have to be likable? Do you have to be, creative? Do you have to be good with numbers? And it was interesting because what I saw is that's a group from the Sport Management Institute that are people that are marketing and compliance and fundraising and all over the spectrum. Well, compliance people had to be everything to everyone. It was weird on the spectrum. They were covering all of it. And that jumped out at me because marketing may have been in one quadrant, or finance, business people are in one quadrant. And I said, that's interesting that you have to be all these things to all these people. And I think in compliance, if you can be successful, having to usually say no and bring in the negative news, that's the worst side of it. So you learn how to be a partner with people and help them in one of the most negative aspects of the industry. It's not negative. I think it's where the ethics are, but how coaches perceive it and people when you're telling them no and you're holding the line and giving accountability, it's not almost positive news. It's the hard part of the job. So I think if you can get through that in a positive way and you're focused on the people and the student athletes and advocating, then the transition to external, what's different about that is the accountability. You're like a head coach, right? Whatever you do in a year cycle, and the next you're back to zero. So if you have a great fundraising year, you're back to zero September 1 or June 1 or whatever your fiscal year is, and you're next on the line again, and you're going to do it all over again. And if you don't perform, if you have, bad luck, donor gets mad, something happens, it doesn't matter. Like, you're out there in the accountability. So I think both sides present great opportunity and learn the challenges that when you're in the chair, you kind of get all that. And so I think it is helpful because in compliance, if you show up every day and you're doing your job and you document it right, you could have a major infractions case and you can have problems. But if you show up and are doing your job and you're putting the effort and you're doing what you're supposed to do, chances are you'll still be there. Fundraising is like coaching. You can do all these things and you can have some bad luck. And if you don't deliver on the results side, then you won't be there. So what I like about the background is both sides is I just think it made me well-rounded and can appreciate everybody from every role and aspect, and hopefully gives you success in the chair to support CMU and make it the best I can make it.
Yeah. So if you think about, I'm going to go one more question on this particular subject, and then we're going to move to sort of, I want to talk to you a little bit about DeLoss. So if you think about, and these are unfair generalizations. So let me begin by saying that. If you think about compliance, some would say pragmatic, black and white, rules followers, down the middle of the road, stay between the lines, color between the lines. Okay. External, development, marketing, got to understand how to weave your way through the gray. You're trying to bring a donor to the finish line. You got to be creative. You've got to think big picture almost all the time. Who are you in that equation?
I think I'm all that. And so that's where I think maybe for the chair, you have to be able to use those skill sets and you use what you need to when you need to. So I think that is what the unique perspective you said of those two backgrounds, and you got tested in both of those things, right? And I would say in my compliance career, knowing I wanted to be in the chair, I did think big picture, try to do some national efforts with Judy Van Horn about how do we make this better, and wanting to be in the chair. I saw where a lot of people were just waiting for their number to get picked. And if your number got picked, the NCAA would come in, and the good chances were you had things going wrong because the system and the structure was not one that was well defined and that presidents and ADs could really defend against. And being able to be in the weeds, I connected to the big picture. I wanted to fix that. I said, look, I know there's good people in this industry that have a lot of ethics and the system is flawed. So how do we fix this? And when I'm in the chair, I don't want to wait for my lottery number to be picked and then not be successful because I have bad luck. And I didn't think it was good for the industry and our student athletes and our coaches. And so when you got to that point and fixed that, then it was like, okay, well, what is next? And it started to be like, let's take on the external side and see if I can make it or not.
Yeah. So DeLoss, I think I love DeLoss Dodd. I think that he's one of the icons in my book. Now, some folks who are younger, I'm certainly have heard of his name, whether or not they know him or not, or knew him or not. But I'm curious. Obviously, you were a very trusted member of his senior team. Where was the you going to him and saying, hey, I need these other experiences, versus him coming to you and saying, I see something in you and I want to give you these other opportunities? What was the connection point on that particular part of the equation?
Yeah, I think that started in the interview. So he was looking for a compliance person, and he did a national search, and he said he couldn't find anybody, so he had to give me the job. I tell him I was the only one young enough and stupid enough to come on and take the challenge. They were headed into a major infractions case. But I told him I aspire to be an AD. since I was in college as a student athlete. And I was working at the NCAA, and I went there because I had been at the University of Georgia. And some mentors had said, hey, if you want to be an AD, that's a great opportunity. It moved from Kansas City to Indianapolis. There were a lot of openings. I had Division I football experience at Georgia. And then there, after about 3 years exactly, the end, Texas was looking for somebody. They had called Georgia. There were some connections, and they said, hey, we would hire Amy. And so Texas called and said, will you talk to us? He was really concerned. He kept asking me my birth date, and I laughed. He said, is that legal? And I said, no. And I said, but I want to be an AD. And honestly, I had dinner with him on my 28th birthday. And I was just so excited to be with the person that was head of the football issues committee and had been, a legend in his own right, wanting to be an AD, to be able to have dinner and just kind of learn and listen. But I really had no idea the quality of person that I was going to have impact my life for so long. And Marianne Dodds actually passed away yesterday. So his beloved wife, and we all know that DeLoss is fabulous, but Marianne's a whole nother level. And, my condolences to the Texas family for that. They're great people, but DeLoss, was a quiet leader. He had 5 sisters. So I give a lot of credit to. I think he, gave a lot of women opportunity. Chris Polanski is somebody that he had as women's AD and trusted her at a time that, there weren't a lot of women getting exposure and power to television and marketing. And then for me, he said, okay, you want to be an AD? And he kept giving me tests. And if I would meet him, he would say, here, I'll keep giving you more. And I was fortunate to be there 18 years, but a lot of that was DeLoss. When another challenge or opportunity would come up, he would give me more and keep letting me grow and giving me exposure and access. He's told me a story where he was at the men's basketball committee, and he finally looked around the room and he said, guys, we need a woman in here. And, Judy Rose ended up being appointed to the committee. He had a lot of respect for her, but he had 5 sisters. So he had a lot of women keeping him straight. And he had Marianne, who's fabulous. And so I think he always appreciated, and he's kind of a gentle giant in all the things that he did to transform athletics. He doesn't get a lot of credit, but I think behind the scenes, he really developed a lot of women to be in the position and be able to be in the room to have the exposure to one day be athletic directors.
Yeah, I think obviously being an athletic director of one of the power brands at the University of Texas, he did carry himself and still does to this day, carry himself in a way that presented this sort of, it's an interesting dynamic because there was an aura of humility about him, but also he had a part of him that also carried bravado, around representing the Texas Longhorns, right? And from being there in Austin, to be able to navigate the politics of being right down the street from the state capitol, it takes a special kind of person. And obviously Chris is doing that now and doing it well, but to have the opportunity to work with DeLoss, a special time. And I think it's great that he believed in you, and he also gave you that opportunity that you talked about in your initial interview with him. And so when it came time to begin looking at AD jobs, I know ultimately, I think when you got the CMU job, you were working with a CDC, but how has DeLoss continued, and then CDC, when your time with him, how did they help? You've had other opportunities along the way, and this CMU opportunity was the right opportunity for you. How did they help you get there?
I always give Noreen Morris some credit. I was a student athlete at University of Connecticut on my first day, my freshman year. She came up and introduced herself and said, hey, I'm Noreen. And she had played soccer. And I think I'm fortunate that I have many, many. I'm lucky to have legendary people like you've said, DeLoss and Chris Del Conte. And, there's so many that I'm very fortunate. And DeLoss taught me it's all about the people. And so how they helped me is I think, I'd identify and say, hey, I want to be you someday, but then just try to be in the room and listen and keep your head down and try to make them successful. And while you're there and you're sitting in the room, I think that's really where you learn. It's not really talking, it's listening. And I was fortunate to get to one, the best places in the country. And I know there's a lot of money and the landscape shifting and there's a lot of things changing. But DeLoss got there in 1982 and it was $7 million. And when he left, the budget was about $180 million in about 2013. And he would always say, it's about the people, it's about the people, it's about the people. And I do believe, even with all the money and all the challenges we're facing, if you do the right thing by the people, the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah. So why CMU? Why Central Michigan University for Amy Folan? It's I'll just stop right there. Why is this the right job for you?
I laugh. A lot of people say, you coming from Austin, Texas to Mount Pleasant, that is so different. But I think they forget I'm from Portland, Maine. There's a lot of things about Michigan and Maine that are the same. When they reached out, I said, tell me about the president, tell me about the place. But I had known, I had mentioned Judy Van Horn before, and her and I worked together nationally. She has her degree from here, master's degree from here. Kevin White has a master's degree from here. Roy Kramer won the national championship in 1974. So there's just tons of tradition with Herb Dramedy and Dave Kylitz and just Marcy Weston and Sue Guevara. There's just so much tradition and history that it was similar to Georgia and Texas in that way, that there's just a lot of great people that have done great things here for a long time. I'm very familiar with the MAC. I lived in Columbus, Ohio from 3rd to 8th grade. So, I'd been familiar with the region and the beauty of Michigan. You kind of come up here for vacations in the summer. And it really is, people would say it's the people and the fit. And there's a lot of great things about this university that I think aligned. They have 230,000 alumni. That's half the footprint of Texas. There's a lot of CMU Chippewas out there that we need to keep getting engaged and activated and back. It has a tremendous history and a lot of sports across the board. And that was attractive to me. We've talked about, baseball, wrestling, softball, gymnastics, football, men's and women's basketball. So it was just a good fit, and that it was a lot of my background from an athletics level, but I think from a personal level, for my family and us to be part of this community, we get to live the pure Michigan experience on a lake every day. It's absolutely beautiful up here. Get the seasons and the ethos and the character of this community, university, and town remind me a lot of Portland, Maine, and Connecticut. When I walk across the campus, it sometimes reminds me of stores. So I think these things are hard to describe, but everybody says it when you know it. It's kind of like when you meet your spouse or people, you can't really put specifics, but to try to say it's just a good match. And I've always felt at home here, and they've been very hospitable in the community. And we just feel fortunate to have this experience, and our families really enjoying being a part of this CMU community and family.
So you got the job during the height of the pandemic, and no one would sign up for that really, but there you are. And so really for almost 2 years, you're running hard in what I would call almost a triage mode, right? It's putting out the hottest fires and finding out how to get from one day to the next with a great deal of uncertainty, outside the pandemic, even with the way of the different situations we're fighting in the world today. Have you felt like you've been able to move from, let's call it the triage part of the job, given the scenario of the last couple of years, to now forward facing, long-term facing, strategic facing direction for the program? Where are you on that continuum, do you feel like?
I don't think we ever tried to leave it. I think the only way to get through it was try to keep that footprint. I will tell you, headed into the bowl game, I thought finally this pandemic stuff is over. And if you followed the Sun Bowl, it was not over. We had quite an experience, but that's kind of what I also love about CMU. This place is tenacity, adversity, perseverance. Whatever you throw at us, we're going to find a way to take it. And we may have less than people that are left and right. We may have it harder than people that are left and right, but you know what? We're going to find a way. We're going to do it, and we're going to get it done. And, I have always had the strategic things in place, how much you were able to implement on them. But I just kept saying, like, we can't stay in this pandemic mode. We have to move forward. So it stops and starts a little bit. But hopefully kind of the vision we laid out, the vision I got was from the CMU community, from our staff. Like I said, this was such a great place. I don't come in here and have some great change of direction. I was attracted because they've had full stadiums. It's been a leader in the MAC. So just continue to be the best version of CMU and ourselves, and return to our roots and do what we did well. And so now where I think we see some traction is we're able to, I'm about a year and a half into here. So the vision we've laid out is starting to get some traction. And we're just really excited this fall to hopefully continue to build upon that vision and really see it take hold coming out of this pandemic, where people aren't so afraid to maybe come to events or don't want to have to wear a mask if they do come. And so hopefully that united and activation that we've been working on continue to work with this community to build back and make sure we're the best version of ourselves. And I think we've had a good start. We've had a good year, and we plan to continue that into next year.
You called out something there that I should have said I was going to talk to you about, and that's your bowl experience, because what an unbelievable few days there in terms of lessons in crisis management, ability to adjust, doing things on the fly, but at the end of the day, giving student athletes an experience that they so richly deserved, right? And so I'm curious, that would not have been something that you would have sat down and written a paper on. Hey, here's something I want to have that I go through one day. Well, on the backside of that experience, what did you learn about your kids, your coaches, your fans, your own leadership style? I'm just interested maybe at a high level on that. And maybe even let's start by just a real brief overview of what happened for those who may not remember exactly how that all transpired.
Yeah, I think Jeremiah Dickey called me at about 1 o'clock in December 26th. I was leaving my house at 1:30. He had told me that the few of their student athletes, a handful, like 7 or 8, had COVID, and he was just kind of touching base to see where we were. We had been fully vaccinated, so unless students identified as feeling like they had symptoms, we wouldn't be testing. So I said, right now we're fine, but I'll let you know if it changes. And I kind of left laughing, thinking, wow, he's very ethical. I don't know if I'd call with 7 or 8 people because, we're going to be playing them. And why am I going to broadcast we're down 7 or 8, to the end of to the very last minute. And when I landed, Kim Adair had met us, from the Arizona Bowl, and they were just very hospitable and they do a great job there. And we were all in. But my phone was blowing up. Kim met me, a lot of friends and people in this business that were having to cancel bowl games, people wanting to play a bowl game. We kind of were very transparent, worked with the Arizona Bowl and connected them with the Sun Bowl. And then things just kind of just kept morphing. And John Steinbrecher, the Commissioner of MAC, did a great job. Our president, Bob Davies, and really a credit to Coach McElwain and his student athletes. I had to tell Coach McElwain, I think it was Monday, hey, I'm not sure where we're playing or who, but I know that we'll probably play a game on Friday. So if you're good with that, and he's kind of laughing. He's like, Amy, you're killing me. Like I said, I know you got to go through game film, but I'll get it to you as soon as I can. And, it's just, they've had a lot of adversity this year. I laughed. Coach McElwain had appendicitis the first game. They just smile and that staff just keeps going. We weren't sure if Robert Morris was going to be a pause. We got that news when we were in Missouri. And then the third game, we were going to LSU, and a week out, our rooms got canceled. So we ended up flying in day of and out the night of. It just, adversity and perseverance. I love what the CMU Chippewas are about. Like, again, it doesn't matter what you throw at us. We'll figure out a way to get business done. They do it with a smile on their face, and they usually come out on top. So it was a wild ride. We actually did have a plane for the team to fly from Tucson to El Paso. Our Longhorn friends had helped us out with that. So I say it's people and family. You'd be surprised, as you know, Mike, you and I go back and there's all kinds of things like that happen behind the scenes. But the crew got COVID that morning. So we had to get on a bus and keep going. So people think they know the twists and turns, but there was a lot more there. But it's really a testament to the staff and this community. What I love is we had former VP of Student Affairs and people that work with our personnel services. They were here like the uniforms. We had uniforms that had Arizona Bowl patches on them, and they needed to get Sun Bowl patches. And so it was a community event, and that's nothing that the leadership can just do. That really goes to every man down the bench, and what they do to it. So I think it speaks to the CMU community, our staff, and everybody from top to bottom. And it's not as deep as a bench, like you've mentioned, comparing it to the Longhorns, but the quality is there. And I think things like that don't happen without great people top to bottom. They just can't. You couldn't pull it off.
Well, it's a great story coming out of bowl season, to be certain. Hey, so there are a number of women in this industry who are very deserving of athletic director opportunities, and some of them are probably more patient than they should be in waiting for that. I would say that your time came many more years after you were prepared. You were prepared to be an athletic director long before you actually got the job. You are now someone that women in the industry look to as an example for how to go about your business and do it the right way. And I think that there is progress being made in that front. There's still a long way to go. And, I know one of the challenges is work-life integration. Kim Demron, who I work with, is a dear friend, and she shares with me, hey, the things that I just don't understand, about being a mom in the industry and that kind of thing. But I'm curious for you to now just take a couple of minutes and speak to the women that are listening to this broadcast, to share maybe what you learned along the way about how to go about doing this the right way, but also to have those who would fight for you and fight alongside you, and how to fight for yourself. And fight's probably not necessarily the right term, Amy, but I think you get the gist of what I'm saying here. What would you share about your experience that can that can help others who are coming along this path with the desire to be an athletic director?
Yeah, well, I laugh. We kind of talked about it a little bit, but when I was
Yeah.
a junior in college, I originally thought I wanted to do sports broadcasting, part of going to UConn, being at ESPN, being a high school graduate from Portland, Maine, and just said, okay, I think I went to Connecticut because it was one of the best opportunities I had to play. Not going to be the biggest scholarship I would have gotten, but kind of trying to be in the biggest pond I could be and see what success. And when I was transitioning from, hey, I don't know if I want to be a sports broadcaster, I think I really love this transformational experience that college athletics has been for me. And I think I see ways I can make it better. I was involved in SAC and I said, I think I want to be an AD. And somebody laughed at me and they said, yeah, good luck. There's 4 at the time, 4 women. And that's all I need, Mike. Usually people that know me well, if you tell me I can't do something, well, then let's challenge. Let's go. We'll find a way to do it.
Let's go for it, right?
Yeah. But I will say that I've talked about some of the people, but there have been people through this business, Ward, Damon Evans, Carla Williams. I was Carla Williams' GA. And so I think, Carla was an example to me. She was a young mom in the business, left coaching, was an administrator, and I was fortunate to work with her. There's many people. These jobs are hard. They're hard for men. They're hard for women. Like, you realize they're a hard job. So I think one of the things that you can do the best is know that it's hard and life is hard, and get good people and learn from good people, and know that it's really, if you keep getting up, we're all going to get knocked down a lot. Do you keep getting up? Do you persevere? Like you said, be around people that teach you how to do it the right way, and do your very best. But I don't think there's an easy one-way path. I think sometimes there are more challenges, and what maybe for women, they're different because you haven't seen people going before you, or people can't relate. I remember being at Texas and it was always the wives trip. And then, my high school sweetheart ended up being my husband. I think we were getting married. It's kind of like, does he go stand with the women or does he stand with the men? So it's not all a women's thing. When you're at any group that in society that there's kind of breaking some of the normal factions. But it's about people. Like, you be humble, be gracious. And then when you're at the table, figure out ways to create solutions, and be able to laugh about the problem. So I don't think getting to this chair is easy. And when you get in, it definitely isn't easy. So I think you can learn a lot from everybody. And I think there are a lot of women, like I mentioned, that have had an impact on me. Some were moms, some weren't. I wouldn't have had the opportunity I do if some of them weren't helping. But there's a lot of men who've let me sit in the room and be at the table and say, hey, I have daughters, and it comes full circle. So I really think, I hope, and I try to give back and look at the generation behind me and make things easier. I try to go, okay, who's Amy Folan of today who maybe wants to be an AD, and what can I do to put her in a position where she has it better off and a better chance of success than I did, or what would I have liked then? But I'll be honest, I have a son and a daughter, and I try to have diversity and inclusion, and I try to look at ethnic groups that I'm not a part of and make sure that I reach out there. And I try to look in my son and daughter and go, I just try to give everybody an opportunity that I can. And then you try to give people opportunities, and then those who rise to the occasion and really show that they are demonstrating that they have a passion for it and that they're going to use that time wisely, try to help as many people as I possibly can. So I don't think it's easy for anybody. I do think there have been some unique challenges when you're like the first, but I really don't try to focus on that, because I know that a lot of people have been a part of having the success and will continue to do that. So try to make things better than what I had, and be mindful of it, but I try not to dwell on it, and make sure that I use the time just doing what I can to be as successful for CMU as possible. And then I think that helps those behind me have the most opportunity for success in the future.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's all really good stuff. Hey, let's end up with a conference question. So, there's been a lot of activity across the board nationally, different conferences over the last couple of years. And, there could be craziness happening today that I don't even know about. But seemingly from the outside looking in, the MAC is a very stable conference. And, there's a combination of ADs that have been there for a little while, and there's some ADs that are new. I mean, even newer than you. You think about Randall and Brian and others. So is the perception that this is a stable conference, is that a correct perception, number one? And then number two, what do you credit that to?
Yeah, I think that's part of what attracted me to the job, right? The MAC has been a stable conference. It's been a known quantity. The conference is maybe one of the most homogeneous groups when you look at budget, geographic footprint, and history, longevity. It's just had a lot of success. So I think that's a lot of people before me. And again, it was one of the attributes that made this job being a great institution, a great conference for a long time, one that was very attractive. And I think as we navigate through those waters, that's a strength we have. We're in the Big Ten footprint. We play a lot of those schools and above and beyond our conference, that they're right here and we're integrated with that and have been for a long time. So I also am continue to be amazed, and we talked about some of the success, but the people that have come through this conference and have built it and made it what it is. And as you mentioned, there's not a lot of conferences that have this longevity or this footprint and have been able to sustain that over time. And very proud to be part of this conference. It is a leader in many respects, and I think it will continue to do that. But we're mindful that the landscape's shifting. So how do we keep taking what we're best at? How do we take that strong alliance, and how do we keep bringing value to this ever-evolving intercollegiate athletics model, and making sure we continue to be a part of that and advancing that into the future?
A lot of good folks and contemporaries of yours, and I think John. I think very highly of John as well. Your commissioner, I think he does a nice job, and he's stable as a person, right? So that's all been good. Well, hey, look, this has moved very quickly, and it may surprise you. We're out of time, but I want to thank you for joining me today. The insights that you've shared. I thank you for your longtime friendship as well, and I look forward to continue to watch your success, not only in the next months and weeks, but in the many years ahead of us. And so thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks for your friendship, and thanks for all you do for intercollegiate athletics. We appreciate your continued contributions, and it's always a pleasure to spend time with you.
Same, Amy. All right, you've been listening From the Chair. I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. We hope you'll join us every Wednesday and listen to From the Chair with the different athletic directors that are able to join us. Our guest today, again, has been Amy Folan, the Director of Athletics at Central Michigan University. I really thank Amy for coming on and spending some time with us. Have a good week, folks. Talk to you next time.